Hello and welcome everyone to the second in our series of monthly Zoom Lunch and Learn educational events sponsored by Clayton Valley Village. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization serving seniors living in Clayton and Concord, California. My name is Carol Hanson Gray and I am honored to serve as Executive Director. Clayton Valley Village, founded in 2014, is part of a national network of over 400 villages throughout the country, whose mission is to help our members live independently in their own homes as they age, by providing social and educational events, as well as an array of home-based services through our volunteer network. Please visit our website at claytonvalleyvillage.org for more information about us and how you can become a member and/or a volunteer. Today, we welcome back Master Gardener Ken Studer, who is one of our valued volunteers at Clayton Valley Village. His last presentation on container gardening was a great hit, so we're looking forward today to Ken telling us how we can grow a vegetable garden in a very small space using straw bales. All of our presentations are recorded and can be accessed on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Clayton Valley Village. During this presentation, everyone will be muted. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat feature, and at the appropriate time, I will read the questions to Ken for him to answer. So please sit back, eat your lunch if you brought one, and enjoy. Ken, I'm now turning it over to you.
Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to Clayton Valley Village's Lunch and Learn program. I think this is the second in a series. I want to thank Carol Gray for all of her hard work, helping to get me prepared for this and in becoming what I call Zoom Central for this kind of a program. The real question is, today we're talking about straw bale gardening. And the real question is why? What's the advantage of straw bale gardening? And why would you want to try it? So the first reason is that if you're like me, you have a very small property and you either live in a condominium or you live in an apartment or you have a yard that has no place to put any kind of vegetables and grow them. So you could have a spot on the south side of your house where it's nice and sunny, but there's a great big tree in the way. You could have a place on the north side of your house where you could plant, but there's no sun there. So the advantage of a bale of hay or a bale of straw in this case is that you can place it anywhere. You can put it on a deck, you can put it on a roof, you can put it on a front porch, you can put it on your patio, and most importantly, you can put it in your yard on top of the ground you already have in a place where you get 6 to 8 hours of sun a day. That's the real key ingredient. The bale also warms up, and by warming up, it allows you to plant earlier in the season. A lot of times that the soil is too cool in the winter and doesn't get warm enough for the plants to really prosper and grow. So they will just sit dormant for a month before they really start to generate any growth. The other reason that you need straw and not hay is that the hay is basically a food crop and a feed crop, I should say, and it will be cut off at the base at about 6 inches high, put into a bale, and sent off to feed the cattle. And it's also basically a twig or a stem that is in there. Straw, on the other hand, is a food that we eat, which is usually rice or wheat or barley, rye, and when it's harvested 2 feet above the ground. And all the seeds and everything are taken off and away. What's left is a nice reed that is 2 feet tall and has no weeds and no seeds in it. So that makes it just a better medium, period, for growing. The advantage of hay is that, the advantage of straw is that it's a reed that is hollow inside. So now you can have nutrients going down the middle of the reed, the outside of the reed, and it absorbs water and your nutrients much better than does hay. So this provides a great medium for you to plant into, just like your soil is. And as we add nitrogen to that, we then start a decomposition process, which is just like a compost pile. So it becomes very fertile. Typical bale is typically 45 inches long, 24 inches high, and 15 inches wide. And the way the baler processes it is that it puts the reeds in the 24-inch direction. So now all the reeds are spacing in the 24-inch direction, and therefore, if you place it up at that location where it's 24 inches high and 15 inches deep, now it will absorb all the nutrients you want, and the water will go through the bale very evenly. So there's other advantages as well. One is that you don't need to have a pill for your back because you're not bent over and you're down on your hands and knees. You don't need a rototiller. You don't need a shovel. You don't need to pull weeds. This bale is now pretty much seed-free and weed-free, so gardening's a lot easier with a bale of straw. The other advantage is that you can place it anywhere in your yard where you get 6 to 8 hours of sun a day. And that's very crucial to having enough stimulus and energy from the sun and the UV light to produce the growth you need in your plants. So with that in mind, the biggest problem you may have is that it weighs about 70 pounds and it's awkward to carry around. So you may need somebody else to help you. They will put it in the back of your car if you go to a hay feed store, and allow you to then have a neighbor maybe help you carry it from there to the backyard. I happen to have a couple of wheelbarrows that I put it in, and I can move it around that way. Once it's in place, it's very sturdy and it won't blow over, and you're ready to go. So by positioning the bale on your deck or anywhere on your property where you can get 6 to 8 hours, then you've got a perfect growing medium to have a lot of success with a tomato or any kind of a vegetable garden. Above that, we're at the point now where if you've got it in a good position, whether it's on a patio like I have mine, facing north to south, so as the sun comes over, both ends of the bale get equal amount of sun, even though we're not at the equator. We basically you can just know where the sun is in your yard and have it facing that direction. So with that in mind, now you're just come to the point where you're going to condition the bale. And conditioning the bale is maybe the only strict rules to follow in gardening, is to get this bale up to speed so that it becomes a compost pile, becomes fertile. As straw alone, it's just sitting there inert. But we want to make it alive and make it so that when you plant it, it's gonna conduce all the roots to grow. Conduce is a new word, incidentally. So Carol, you want to put up the conditions of the baling right now, and we'll talk about that. There we go. Okay. So conditioning the bale is a process of adding nitrogen fertilizer to the bale for a period of about 2 weeks. And this is very important in order to get the bale to be a fertile compost pile before you actually plant all of your vegetables. So as you can see on the screen there, it's a process of adding high nitrogen fertilizer to the bale. And it doesn't really matter what fertilizer you use, as long as a lawn fertilizer typically is high in nitrogen, like the Miracle-Gro fertilizer, ammonium sulfate, which you can get at any nursery or Lowe's or Home Depot, and any high nitrogen fertilizer. The two things you want to be careful of is you don't want it to be slow release, otherwise it'll take 6 weeks instead of 2 weeks. to actually condition the bale. And you don't want it to have a herbicide or weed and feed in with the fertilizer. That'll kill everything in the bale and it'll be of no use to you. So once you have a fertilizer, then you can either take and buy a fertilizer that you can put on with a hose-in sprayer, or you can use it where you can just actually spread it out by hand on top of the bale evenly and distribute it that way. What you don't want to use is a little bit of either bone meal or, blood meal or fish emulsion. And the reason for that is it attracts rodents. So if you have skunks, or if you have raccoons, or if you have mice and rats, even if you have a dog or cat, the smell of the fish emulsion is going to make them want to chew on the bale or chew on your vegetables. And you don't want that to happen. So I don't recommend blood meal or fish emulsion for that reason. So the process is, the scheduling is that on day one, you use a half a cup of high nitrogen fertilizer and you water it all the way in so it comes clear out the bottom of the bale. And that may take 5 gallons. So there's a little bit of a high water usage in the first 2 weeks to get this started. The reeds will swell up, they'll get tighter, and you'll see the bales. If you put your finger down in the bale, it'll be hard to even get your finger into the top of the bale. Day 2, you just water it in. Day 3, you process the same thing as day 1. But a suggestion would be, because you're going to be doing this probably in March, and since the timing of most of the plant sales for vegetables is in early April, you can actually start prepping all this in the middle of March and get your bale started early. So you have vegetables earlier in the year. So you can take the coil of the hose, put it right in front of the bale in the sun, and now you can water in the middle of the day because you don't have any plants in the bale yet. So use the heat of the sun to warm the water to help break down the bale faster. That's really what we're talking about here. Day 4, you water it in again. Day 5, you repeat day 3. Day 7 now, you've got enough of the nitrogen in the soil, or in the, not soil yet, into the bale to really start the microbe action, okay, to condition the bale to be a pile of compost. You're going to notice that the temperature in the bale rises significantly. And so what's happening here is that you're going through the decomposition process with the microbes. So in the bale, when it's dry, when it's inert, you still have the microbes, which are living, but they're not active. For some reason, they can last for 2 years without water. I don't know why, but they can. So the microbes, the bacteria, the nematodes, the protozoa, the small worms, the fungi are now starting to chomp away very quickly on those reeds with the advent of water and nitrogen. And in doing that, it's like them being on a treadmill and they gain a lot of heat. So what they're going to do is they're going to raise the temperature of the bale to about 140 degrees. So it's going to get hot. You're even going to see steam rising off that bale at times. And of course, that's way too hot to plant into. So by waiting until day 7, we're going to then start and buy a fertilizer, which is a balanced organic fertilizer, which has microbes in it as well, like a 10-10-10, a 5-5-5 rating, so that you will use that throughout the growing season to continually fertilize the bale. And on day 7, you'll start to use the 10-10-10. Day 9, you do the same thing. By day 13, you will have reduced the temperature now. You've still continued to water, but the temperature will come down to lower than 95 degrees. Now it's right primed in order to be a good condition to plant. So, and then every week after that, you're going to apply a small amount of fertilizer, because a lot of the watering you do every day is going to leach out those nutrients through the straw, which are reeds now. They're hollow. They don't hold the water as well as the soil does in the ground. So you do have to replace the nutrients in the soil or in the bale more often. And I recommend just using a half cup every week, once a week during the whole growing season, clear to the end of September. And that basically conditions the bale so that the next step is just to start planting. So thank you, Carol. You can take that down.
Okay. Make sure that everyone knows that these these will be handouts that we will email to you. Everything that he's showing today, we will email to you in a thank you letter, a thank you email for joining us. So you don't have to take a lot of notes if you don't want to. So, all right.
We're going to stop and see if there's any questions so far.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? I don't have any here in the chat, so if you have a question, one of the questions was, will you send us the info on the screen? And the answer to that is yes. Are there any other questions anybody has before Ken continues? No questions, Ken, so.
All right.
Again.
I'm doing such a great job, right?
Yes, you are, absolutely.
You're going to need very few tools. You're going to need a trowel. You're going to need some kind of a knife or saw. This is a tool for the yard, which has a serrated edge here that you can see will cut through the straw. You could use a small serrated knife from the kitchen because you're really not going to damage the knife with the straw. It's very, very soft. And by the time you've gone through this 2-week period, you can put your finger down in the bale and you can feel the temperature. And you will notice that the bale is significantly softer now. It's just mush inside. And that's what those microbes have accomplished. I have here a composting temperature thermometer, which is a very big probe going to a compost pile. And that's what I use down into the bale to test and see what the temperature is. But this last year, it went up to 140 degrees for 3 days, okay? And then I just waited for the temperature to come down before I started to plant. So here's my little baby bale. I use this to demonstrate with because bales are about 60 pounds. They're just awkward to carry around and hold. And they slough off tons of straw, and you got straw everywhere. So I bought this little, I got this at an art store. I'm not sure why you'd have it at an art store, but they do. And this bale is not a good demonstration bale, really, because the straw is just any old way in here. It's kind of like it's just been spun and then bound up that way. But what I've done with this knife here is I've taken and I've cut a hole down into the bale all the way around, about the same size as my 3-inch pot here. And this is a bell pepper that I have here to plant, which hasn't grown much because it's probably too root bound by now. And you want to be sure that it's deep enough that especially in tomatoes and all of these, that you can put it 1 inch below the surface. Unlike you do other plants in your soil where you want the plant to be 1 inch above so that you don't have rotting and you have enough air to the root source. The outer inch of these bales is very porous, very open, and it's not going to get the water that it needs. So if you plant this flush to the top, then the whole top inch of this small little pot is going to be dry and won't stay wet as you need to be wet to really get it to grow. So we recommend that you plant it down in a good 1 inch below the surface so that it's getting water throughout the entire root ball. So what I do to start after I've taken all of this out and thrown away all of this extra reeds is I take and put some potting soil in the bottom, because what I want to make sure is that the soil from the roots and the reeds make full contact with the root ball. And the reeds are so so porous and such low density that I'm always not sure that's going to happen. And if you don't get the roots to stay wet for the first week or two, you're in trouble then. So once I put some soil in the bottom, I pull this out here. This is a little bit root bound, not much, but I'll rough it up a little bit to make it more able to grow out into the surrounding environment. And I'll place it down in here and push it down tight. Then I'll take more soil and I'll place it all the way around the edges and push it down in so that you have full contact with the straw. To make sure you do it. We have done a little bit of experimenting with just seeds, and the theory with seeds is you put 1 inch of soil on top of the bale and then fertilize it and get it And then you put the seeds down in, you know, like every 6 inches of whatever you're going to do. But we found that it's such a varied environment that you really can't get a good results. You might only get 1 out of every 4 seeds to really germinate, as opposed to a hothouse environment or to a potting environment where you can control the amount of moisture and everything to it. So we've stopped advising that you can really start with seeds on top of the bale and do it that way. At least that hasn't been practical in this part of the country. Maybe it works back east better. Anyway, once you get this down in there and down tightly pushed in, then you can take and water it in some more and do it that way.
Okay, we have one question. Someone wanted to know what kind of soil did you use?
Potting soil, just standard potting soil from your nursery. That's what you would use, because that has some microbes in it. It's a very organic material. That works fine. As opposed to taking soil, clay soil out of your yard, which probably has not been amended. It's a little more of a varied environment. And so you want to make sure it matches the soil that's in here. And this is always potting soil from every nursery and doing that. So you're going to space these according to the spacing of each of the different vegetables that you can plant. So tomatoes, which have a huge root ball, they will go down 2 feet, clear out the bottom of the bale. By the time August comes, and they will be 2 to 3 feet wide inside the bale. That's how big the root ball gets on a tomato. But if you're planting chard or spinach or anything of that nature, lettuce, you can plant those every 6 inches across the top of the bale on both sides. So you have to look at the chart of that particular vegetable you want to plant and see what it says for how dense you can put it. And I'll show you what I did with my bale at the end here, so you get an idea of what I planted.
Okay, no more questions so far. There were questions, but you already covered them, so it's good.
So let me move this way. You're going to need to set up a watering system. Well, let me put this a different place. Because you need to water it every day, and in doing it every day, you may be on vacation this summer. You may forget to get up at 7 in the morning and water before the sun comes up and it's on your bale, and you don't want to water with the sun on the plants. So it's very simple to put in a simplified automated watering system. So this is a $30 timer that runs on 2 AA batteries. You can get this at Home Depot or Lowe's. I think you can even get it at your nurseries. And this is made by Orbit, O-R-B-I-T. And it's super easy to just change the dial, to set the time, to set the duration. Those batteries will last you all summer. So this end goes on your hose bib at the house. And this end goes onto the hose. And I have it set to come on at 7 in the morning for 6 minutes. But I have my, as you will see, I have my soaker hose going back and forth 4 times on the top of that bale. So I've got about 30 feet, well, I have 2 bales. So it gets plenty of water in 6 minutes. If you have it too long, you're just leaching out all those nutrients and letting too much water just flow out on the ground. So here you have a pressure regulator, which is 25 PSI, so that you don't get a burst when it comes on. You don't get 65 pounds of pressure, which can blow some of the fittings on your hoses. And again, these are all at Home Depot or Lowe's. Then you have a 1/2 inch piece of just PVC tubing that you can buy connectors for, and you just push this in. It's strictly a thumb press, which connects the hole to the tubing. And I've recommended using just 1/4 inch. This is a 1/4 inch soaker hose, and this is a 1/4 inch inline drip system. So you don't have to add the drips to it at all. They're built right into the line, and they emit, I think, 1 gallon an hour, maybe a 1/2 gallon an hour. And so you can run these back and forth. The reason I recommend 1/4 inch, not 1/2 inch, is because it's easier to have a tighter radius bend back and forth across your plants and across the top of the bale. And then there's an end plug you put in here. And so you can just cut it with a pair of scissors and whatever length you need. So for probably $50, you basically got yourself set up that you don't have to even worry about it. The only thing you have to do is once a week, come out there with your little 1/2 cup of fertilizer and sprinkle it back on top, and it'll soak it right in and keep your plants, well fed. So this is a real simple way to do it. Once you're set up, it'll probably take you an hour at the most to do that, and away you go. So that's what I would recommend for a way to make this really easy for you and take care of it that way.
So we have one more question here. Someone wanted to know if it's too late to start the process and plant tomatoes.
No. In fact, there was a sale that's starting this weekend or tomorrow at Orchard in Lafayette, and they're giving 50% off all their vegetables. And obviously realizing this is the end of the season, but you're going to need 2 weeks to prep it. So it's going to take until the end of June before you're probably ready to plant. Maybe not, maybe the 3rd week of June. But no, you can start. It's not too late. As you'll see, my plants got a late start and they're not even close to producing fruit yet. They're just starting to bloom. So yeah, different vegetables have a different range of time. One thing you should note is that on tomatoes, you need to buy of all the varieties, the hundreds of varieties that there are, you need to know whether it's a determinate type or an indeterminate type. I don't know if that's a word that anybody's heard before, but a determinate type means that they produce the fruit all within a short cycle, like within 2 months. And because the bales are going to be pretty much spent by the end of September, August, and a lot of tomatoes will continue to produce through November. So it doesn't work well with the bale. So you want to get a determinate variety, and there's many, many varieties. And if you go to the nursery, they'll tell you which ones. In fact, you can usually read it on the label. Indeterminate means that it will, if it starts to produce at the end of June, it'll produce clear through November. All the time, it'll just keep making tomatoes. Now, this is only applicable to tomatoes. So pay attention to whether it's determinate or indeterminate before you buy.
Okay.
So Carol, you want to put up the plants that we can do, the 22
Yes, let me.
plants that are you can put in a bale and have a good success with.
Can you see that?
Yep. Okay. So this is really a partial list, but it gives you an idea of just what you can, whether it's strawberries, eggplant, lettuce. I've got flowers in mine just to add a little bit of color to it. Spinach, kale, garlic, chard, cauliflower, broccoli. I put in peppers. I've got a couple of peppers in there. Eggplant. I have 1 eggplant and I have 1 cucumber. And then you can put in all your herbs as well. So it's a whole big variety. And the herbs, don't take up a lot of space. So you can plant those along the sides, on the ends, on the edges a little bit. Just plant them deeper so that they get to the center easily where the moisture is the most prevalent. Are there any questions on the list of vegetables to plant?
Haven't got any so far.
Wait a second,
Okay.
What about raspberries? Can you plant raspberries?
No, well, typically no. Raspberries are going to be growing throughout the year, and they are not an annual. Raspberries and blueberries and all the berries. So you want something that you can leave in the ground over the winter and grow again next year, where by the time you get through with the bale and they're really becoming, bearing a lot of fruit, it's going to be time for the bale to be tossed. So I wouldn't recommend it. Those are things you can plant along a trellis or a fence and leave them in your yard, year after year.
Okay, we have a couple more questions here. One of them is, can herbs take full sun that tomatoes need?
Not all herbs, you're right. And I am not an expert on vegetables and herbs. So I think you need to be careful when you're buying them to see whether they take partial shade. You could possibly put them on the back side of your bale, because at this time of year, even the back side of the bale, if you've got it oriented right, will get some sun. So get a little creative, even on the ends. If you put it on one end and it's only getting sun from 10 to noon, that may be just perfect for that herb.
That's a good idea. And then the other question is, what do you do with the bale once it's been used for a growing season?
Now that the bale at the end of the growing season is only about a foot high and it's kind of slumped over, you're going to, you want to use it for compost, and you're going to want to use it for mulch. So now you can take the bale and just cut off the tops of the vegetables, leave the roots in there, and now take it and spread it on top of the rest of your yard as mulch. And let it just, you know, over the winter and the raining of all that, you can use it for mulch, and it's a great way to actually kill two birds with one stone.
It's great.
The last thing I want to talk about is a trellis system. So here's a little demo trellis that I've made, and you don't want to use on the tomatoes the cage type of trellis, because if it gets top heavy and the wind blows, then it's going to blow over the bale, because it's connected to the bale. And we're talking probably in the middle of August when the tomato plants are 5 feet high, and they probably weigh 30 pounds up on top with a lot of tomatoes. So it's better to have an independent system. And this is 1.25 inch PVC pipe. I don't use any glue on it. These are just pressed together. And so that you can use them year after year, just take them, pull them apart and store them in your garage or out of the way, and then put them back together again. On this one here, I've taken and drilled a couple of holes through about every 9 inches, and just put a wire in that I can attach the peppers to, and the cucumbers to, and the tomatoes to. Mine, as you will see in a minute, is 6 feet high, because you've got 2 feet of bale and then 4 feet on top of that. So it looks pretty big, but being independent, it will work for the whole summer. And then I just broke it down from last year and reused it this year. So this is something you're going to have to invest in as well. And they will cut it for you at Home Depot. So if you don't have a hacksaw or some way to cut it down to size, if you have, well, I would use 1.25 inches. You could use a smaller material, but I think you want the sturdiness of it of 1.25 inches as opposed to 3/4 or 1 inch diameter PVC pipe. And this is just Schedule 40.
And
Any questions on the trellises?
What kind of wire are you using?
I don't know. It's just a standard piece of aluminum wire. It's not super strong. It comes in a little coil for $5 for 100 feet. And I just run it through here, because you're not adding, you know, by the time you've done it on 3 or 4 tiers, you're not adding much weight to either tier. And it's loose. It's not really tight. It's just something to keep them from flopping over and to support the tomatoes at every level, or the peppers at every level, or the cucumbers at every level.
And how did you attach the wire to the PVC?
I just wrapped it around my finger. Okay. So I just, you know, just took it at the end and wrapped it around and cut it off with a pair of, you know, pair of pliers.
Okay.
That's how simple. So it comes out the end, comes down, goes across, comes down, goes across. So it's just a big S-weave to do it.
Okay. We got another question that says, is there any problem with squirrels?
Well, I have not had any. I know that, Carol, you've had problems with, and when especially in the ground, where you're 2-3 weeks into harvesting, and all of a sudden one day you come out and somebody has just eaten all your fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Bale really is more of a deterrent. Maybe they've got their noses too close to the ground and they're not climbing up on the bale. For squirrels, probably could get on a bale and chew it up. I have squirrels on my back fence all day long, and I didn't have any trouble last year. Now, whether these squirrels are different than the squirrels in your backyard, I don't know. I think the last thing that I would mention is when you position it on soil, you want to make sure that you put down a landscape fabric or cardboard or papers so that the weeds in the ground won't come up through the bale. And also the pests in the ground won't come up through the bale. So that you really have a pretty much a sanitary environment to start with. The only thing you will find growing in your bale, because of the fungi, are small black mushrooms. And they don't hurt anything. I don't even pick them off anymore. I just leave them there. But you won't get weeds. You're not going to get other, bugs or anything. I have hardly any bugs in my bale eating. So I find it to be a really easy, simple way to grow vegetables and get the kind of sun you need and to get the watering you need with a nice drip system. And away you go.
Okay, and if you put it on your cement on your patio, does it get too warm in the bottom of with the sun beating
No,
up?
but I'll show you what does happen. In fact, today, because I took my timer and mounted it onto this board I just showed you, I turned on my water this morning to run 6 minutes, and 1 hour later, I remembered I hadn't turned it off. So you will see some staining on my patio that I'll show you now that you shouldn't get, but you will get a little bit of the leaching of the nutrients and so on out onto your patio, which I have to admit is a downside because I had to take and power wash it off this last year. But let me show you. So these are my two bales right here. And you can see all the water at the bottom because I forgot and left the water on for an hour. This is my soaker hose that I have, and I have it going back and forth 4 times across the top of these 2 bales. And I can run it for 6 minutes a day and fully saturate the bale. But this morning, I got a little carried away. Anyway, I've added some flowers to it, which I just put in last week. And I have some sage here, and it looks like thyme is here. And I don't know, what is this? That's oregano, and this is not doing well. Growing on the side of a bale is a little tough. You really have to make sure that you get the plants deeply into the middle of the bale to really make sure they get fully saturated with water. But you can see here how my trellis system looks and how my tomatoes and stuff are doing. This one is not growing really well. I'm not too happy with what's happening there, but I got a late start. These have only been in here for 3 weeks now. Normally these would be twice the size. They'd be clear to the top. These are cucumbers and I think a squash. And we have 2 peppers here, hot pepper, a jalapeno pepper, and a mild pepper. And then I added some flowers at the end, which I just put in last week. So this is how things look at this time. Normally these tomatoes would be twice this size. So probably not a real good demonstration for you after all this talk, but that's reality sometimes. We don't always get what we want. It's an imperfect science. So once you've really got this conditioned and you're planting, it's pretty much just carefree. Once a week, you're going to come out and fertilize, and that's about it. And tie them up onto your trellis. And then year after year, you have the same trellis, and you can just take and buy 1 or 2 or 3 new bales and get them set up. You've already got your irrigation system made. You've got all that done. Voila. It's an easy process. And you get to pick at the prime time of juiciness and ripeness and have fresh vegetables every night. So that does it for me, and I'll be happy to take any more questions you may have.
Okay, we've got a question that says they bought plastic netting to drape over the PVC pipe. Will that work?
Well, netting is a very general term. You've got to be able to tie to it. So your plant, I don't know that the netting is so open that it will weave itself through it. I've never heard of that before. But if you're trying to keep the animals off, so this is on the outside and the tomato plant and all the other plants are in the middle, I don't think that's going to hold it up structure-wise. You know, tomato is pretty heavy, as it gets mature. And as it grows up to 4 feet high, you really need a pretty solid structure to support that.
So do you think that you could plant your tomatoes with the wires and everything, but then put netting over the entire thing to keep the squirrels out?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Absolutely.
Okay.
That would work. So that's a good idea.
Okay. And then we had one person that came in late and wanted to know about whether you can plant seeds in the bale. You covered that already, but maybe you just want to touch on it again.
Yeah, I don't recommend it because when we've tried it, we have not had very good luck with the germination process. By only having an inch of soil on top and then trying to put the seeds down in and keep them wet, because you have to water them 3 times a day, you know, just a little bit to keep it damp. And you're going to have to do that for 3 to 5 weeks. It's a lot of work. And then you're going to get maybe iffy results. So we prefer to go with the little seedlings and pay your $3 or your $5. I mean, where can you get a whole season worth of tomatoes for $5? So it's still a very good value. And but for lettuce and that kind of thing, you can plant them very close together. Tomatoes and the cucumbers and the squash are going to have to be put, you know, almost just 2 or 3 per bale.
And you already covered this too, but somebody wanted to know, how heavy are the bales?
60 to 70 pounds. So they're hard to handle. You can't get your arms around them. It isn't that they're so heavy. It's just that you can't grab onto them. When you buy them, they'll put them in your car for you or in the back of your truck, whatever. Just bring in a sheet of plastic to put them on. And then I have a wheelbarrow, and I just take them, put them in the wheelbarrow out of the car and bring them back to the back of my property. So that's what I do. And I'm single. I don't have a lot of, you know, support and help. You get a neighbor to help you and do that.
Seems to me like you could put like a rope around each end of the bale if you wanted to lift them and carry them.
Well, you can put gloves on, and then you could grab onto the strapping. But
so there is strapping around it.
Huh?
So there is strapping.
Yeah,
around the bale.
there's 3 circles of twine, or it's a strapping material that holds the bale together. So you can put on gloves and grab onto that, but they're still awkward. You know, they're just big and clumsy.
Okay, and let's see. Our tomatoes are over the top of the tall baskets. Can we trim the tops to keep them from overloading the basket?
When you say basket,
Not sure what basket means.
yeah, they need to have a trellis or some kind of a tomato cage. Is that what they're talking about?
Jim, this is to you. Do you want to clarify that, Jim Whitfield? Okay. He says tomato cage, over the top of the tomato cage.
Yeah, if it's over the top of the tomato cage, I would recommend that, yeah, you probably trim it back. You will force it to not grow so much, but to actually produce more fruit. So otherwise, you didn't get a big enough cage, because these will grow 4 to 5 feet high, and most cages are 3 to 4 feet high. So it just tells you next year, buy a bigger cage.
And then someone wanted to know, can you show the foot on the piping to keep the pipe structure upright?
Oh, yeah. The foot process is just a T, okay? A T thing here. And then 2 more. These are about, in this little sample, these are only about 6 inches long. I put a cap on the end just to keep it clean. But that's all it is. It's just a T fixture. And none of this is with glue. It's just press fit. It's tight. This will all come out.
So there's 2 ends on each foot has 2 ends that go into the middle, or is that one long piece?
No, they're 2 ends.
Okay.
So they don't go through. Yeah. So they're like, on the one I have, a real size one, I think they're 9 inches wide. So it's 18 plus 3. So you really have about 21 inches of foot support. And of course, as they get heavier, then they hold themselves down better too. Heavier with, I mean, the weight of the tomatoes and squash and that kind of thing.
Okay. And somebody wants to know what your favorite tomato recipe is.
I don't have one. I'm just a bachelor that makes do. But my favorite tomato recipe actually is just a slicer tomato with mozzarella cheese in the middle, a little bit of balsamic vinegar, and some what's the herb?
Basil?
Anyway,
Basil?
basil. Thank you. I love that. That's great, and it's fresh. You take it off the vine and you're eating it within an hour, so it just tastes terrific.
So you got your basil growing in your straw bale too, right? So you pick a basil leaf and you pick the tomato.
So, take your favorite vegetables and put them in the bale, and just start experimenting. That's really how it all is. And there's no perfect science. Things will grow and some won't grow. And we know in the horticulture industry, we don't have aspirin, we don't have pills to take. We really don't have a lot of science that we can adjust to a better culture. And what we're really talking about here is culture. Overwatering, underwatering, too much fertilizer, not enough sun. All of those are variables that we can control. That alone dictates success in most plants today. Very few plants die from pests eating away at the leaves. Pathogens are about the only thing that really will kill, which is a virus, COVID-19, things like that. Otherwise, we pretty much kill our own plants, either lack of water, too much water, the wrong plant in the wrong location. We have more to do with that than the plant does itself.
Okay.
I will mention before I close that for a resource, this book, which is about 100 pages long, and it's a lot of pictures, is called Straw Bale Gardens Complete. And the author is Joel Karsten. And this is on Amazon. I think it's 12 bucks. And it's a terrific resource. Easy reading and lots of pictures. Tells you how to do everything, from start to scratch. How do you make your own bales? That's pretty much for people probably living in Iowa. And then Carol has this publication by Master Gardeners of California. And it's 6 pages long, and it is a great treatise on just what to do, what not to do, go through the conditioning process. So she will pass this out or give it to you as a PDF, and you can look at it on your computer or print it out. So this will be a great resource.
Yeah. So I wanted to let everybody know that everyone who has signed up today will be getting an email from us, and it'll have handouts of the screenshots that Ken referred to, and that thing from the UC on Bale, University of California on Bale gardening. So we'll be sending those out. So Ken, is there anything else you wanted to do as you close?
No, happy gardening. Get outside, get your hands dirty, get some fresh air, a little bit of sunshine. You'll be a lot happier. Sure beats, staying in the house all day long.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Ken. We really appreciate all the wisdom that you shared today. And thank you all for joining. And I hope that you'll think about joining us again for our upcoming Zoom Lunch and Learns, and you'll be getting an email with those dates and what the topics are going to be. So thank you again, and we'll close our meeting. Thank you.